Good afternoon. Welcome to the Barnstable Conservation hearing. Before I open up the meeting, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for quorum purposes.
Abadili is absent today. Foster?
Present.
Gilmore present. Hearn?
Present.
Lee?
Present.
Moran?
Present.
Sampu is not here yet. We do have, Administrator Darcy Carley,
Present.
Staff Member Kim Kavanaugh, and Agent Ed Hoops.
Present.
We do have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April the 4th, 2023 at 3 p.m. on the applications of Detroit W. Euclid, Trustee 539 Civil Avenue, Nominal Trust, Custom Works Contracting LLC, Custom Works Contracting LLC, John Wilbur. The hearing is an in-person hearing in the James Crocker Hearing Room, and it will be televised on Channel 18. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointments by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and transmitted by the Information Technology Department for the Town of Barnstable on Channel 18. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmissions, please let me know. Seeing none, this afternoon's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda, next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisements. Please send your checks to Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. The COVID-19 extensions of pandemic-related authorizations regarding to the public meetings was signed by the governor on March 29th, extending the exemptions to March 31st, 2025. For the Town of Barnstable, it will be up to the chair of each board and commission to determine the meeting format of future meetings. Hybrid option is not available. So I'm taking these authorizations to decide to determine the next two hearings from April the 25th and May 2nd. It will be remote meetings. It is important for the staff to know in advance at least two hearings in advance so that they can plan for the future about the notifications. Also, on April the 25th, I will schedule a vote for the future meetings. At that time, we should have a full commission at that time. This afternoon, Commissioner Shampoo will be at the hearing about 3:20 to participate in the workshop with the shellfish rating maps. So I will take things out of order to waiting for him. The couple of things I just want to make announcement is, one, the annual report for the Scudder Lane will be tabled to May the 4th. Under the continuance, the applicants for the Lorry Settlement Trustee Bonnybrook Realty Trust has request for a continuance without request to June 6th.
Excuse me, Tom. It would be May 2nd for the...
Oh, sorry, yes, yeah. May 2nd.
And is it June 6th or June 4th for the Sidman? Bonnybrook.
June 6th.
June 6th, right.
So the first item I want to go over is the extension request. Peak is coming, so let me go through the extension request. This is New Rushy Mars Realty Trust, LLC, 1541 Main Street, Contour SE3-5767. This is the first request. Good afternoon. Nice to see you. Is your mic on?
It is now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So again, Mike Ford, attorney representing the applicant. I'm pinch hitting for Sean Reardon, the engineer who submitted this request for Mr. McCourt. This involves the Japanese Pavilion and Japanese Garden, and it is a request for a one-year extension. As indicated in Mr. Reardon's letter, we're about 90% complete, but there is still some work to do, and we'd ask for the additional time.
We usually extend it for the 3 years because the staffing, we practically, well, they prefer to have the 3 years. So if you finish early, you can request for COC. Any question for Mike? No? Staff?
No, so we're confirming they're going to have a three-year
Right.
extension. Okay.
That's what I heard, so
Yep, yep.
that's fine.
Could I have motion to approve the extension request?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to see you. Now, since Pete is here, we're going back to the shellfish rating. Before I give it to Nina and Liz Lewis to do the presentations, I just want to mention for the public informations, we have planned it for 3 workshops, and this is the first one. And primarily is for the commissioners to ask questions with the discussions with the natural resource staff. The second workshop is scheduled for April the 11th, and that's for the public comment. And then the third one would likely be April the 25th, so that we have come back to commissions with more discussion, and then maybe a final vote on that shellfish rating maps. So that is the process. So welcome, Nina and Liz Lewis.
Good afternoon. Nina Coleman, Natural Resource Director. Good to see you all in person. With me this afternoon is Liz Lewis, the shellfish biologist for the town of Barnstable. And we thank you for the opportunity to discuss these shellfish habitat rating maps. I want to just clear up a few things. These maps have been going since 2000, approximately every 10 years. The maps in question are for the Three Bays area. And they were not enacted or governed by our Shellfish Committee. I think for ease of understanding, I think we should call the group that worked on the maps a working group rather than a subcommittee. So it's a working group of local folks with knowledge of our waters and our shellfish habitat areas. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz. She's the expert on this. I do have our protocol that she's going to be going over that created these maps through this working group. If anybody needs a copy of that, or if the public would like a copy of that, I have that. And I'm going to turn it over to Liz. Thank you.
Is that the memo dated January 26, 2023?
This one is rated, is from July 6, 2022. So we had just done another one for Barnstable Harbor, and that's the one I believe you have. So I want to make sure you get a copy of July 6th, so you have the proper members that participated.
Yes, I do.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I got one.
I'll take one. Do you want me to, are you going to do this part, or do you want, are you going to?
Okay. So I just wanted to give you a little background to begin, and pardon me, I am losing my voice. So if you can't hear me, please do ask for me to repeat. This started during the year 2000, so before my time. Tom Marcotti, I think this was an idea that he came up with, but it was requested by the peer committee, which I'm not familiar with the peer committee at the time. And it was requested that Natural Resources formulate a working group to map significant shellfish resources and habitat areas for selected embayments in the town of Barnstable. So there have been several iterations of this, 2000, 2005, 2016, and now 2022. And that's what we'll be going over today. Different embayments have been done, including the Centerville River, Pompanesett Bay, Shoestring Bay, Three Bays, and Barnstable Harbor. Generally, Barnstable Harbor is taken also into consideration with Three Bays, but we decided to separate them in this exercise this year. So that will be coming down the pike shortly. So in 2000, this working group was formulated to look over the Three Bays. It was made up of individuals that had a wide range of expertise, anywhere from commercial shellfishers, recreational shellfishers, scientists, management, people that were making management decisions. We have tribal members that have been represented. And it was really based on a subjective analysis of the shell fishery. It could be either current context or historical context. So we wanted to make sure that those that were making these decisions did not rely solely based on the stock that was in place, because these stocks can change from time to time. If someone has been fishing in that area, you're not going to find anything in that area left. So we wanted to make sure that historical component was taken into account as well. So again, the standing shellfish resource populations were not solely what this was based on. So we have tried over the years to keep the members of the committee of, well, the working group the same. Though since 2000, we've had several members pass away, unfortunately. We've had members retire that we can't get a hold of anymore. So as many members that we could, we've tried to keep the same. This year in particular, there were a lot of new members because we had a lot of people pass away. Our shell fishery is getting significantly older. So you will see a lot of new participants on the top there. And it was a wide range from consultants to commercial shell fishermen, but really the point was that we wanted people that knew the shell fishery based on how we were coming up with the significance. So that's the important part that I really want to clarify. We had 10 members on this working group, and they would rate an area, a small bit of shoreline. They would rate it either significant, not significant, or they're not familiar with the area. If you're not familiar with the area, we're considering that not significant because it's not important enough to you to know the area, right? So out of those, let's say 7 people said the area was significant, 2 said it was not significant, and 1 said, I don't know the area. The area would be rated a 7. So it is not taking into account, they're not coming up with a number from 1 to 10. They are just counting as 1 vote for themselves. And then those numbers are how we come up with the habitat rating. So a 7 will say that 7 people said the area was significant. So this year you'll notice that we have the map up here. You'll notice that a lot of the ratings went up. Some of them, a couple of them did go down, but the majority of them went up in numbers. And there's a couple theories, but remember, these are only theories. These are things that keep me up in the middle of the night, and I'm thinking about, wow, why the big change? So the first one is because we were strategically picking people that knew the shell fishery. Previously, we had some people, such as someone from the Division of Marine Fisheries, that only comes to our embayment about once a month and doesn't really know these areas like a commercial shell fisherman might. So anyone that we had to replace, we tried to replace with someone that really knows the area. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have too many not familiars. We wanted people to know the shell fishery if it was good or bad. Having said that, we still had people that were saying not familiar, and those that maybe as a recreational shell fisher, if you don't come out that often, we were hoping to have people that would go out and actually go on the ground and see what's going on there and see what the habitat is like. And so we were selecting people that were either really active to get themselves out there or had been fishing or know the area really well. And so I think the numbers went up because in 2011, we had a lot of not familiar with the area, and that counted against the shell fishery. So those people were replaced. So that's one theory. The other one that I can think of, having been in this biologist position now for a few years, is that as we are getting more peers in the area, I think a lot of the commercial shell fishermen in particular are starting to say, well, there's less area for me to fish, and so these areas are becoming more important. They're finding less ground to actually fish, or they need to, save what they have left to fish. So that's one idea, but I can't speak for the members themselves. If they decide to come, I'm sure we'd love to hear from them. So I will open this up to questions, if anyone has questions about these maps.
I'll just have the first one. I just want to make sure the method that you're using is the same as the previous evaluations.
It is the same exact that has been used since 2000. In fact, what you have in front of you is the same exact notice that Tom Marcotti sent out in 2000. I just added the different years. He updated it in 2016 for that assessment, and then I just added the little blurb for 2022. So it's exactly the same that it's been done. And I know there have been debates on how this has been done previously. I wanted to keep it as consistent as possible in the method and in the people.
Thank you, Liz. Bill?
I'd like to first say that for those unfamiliar with this kind of a rating, that for habitat assessments, expert opinion or panels of expert opinion is a fairly common tool. And so I have no problem with the idea that you had a bunch of what you would call local experts rating the habitat. I used to work for the National Marine Fisheries Service, and I was a consultant for a number of years, and I've been involved in various Delphi panels. This particular study kind of bothers me because the other Delphi panels I'm familiar with, and I went online, looking at Delphi assessments by experts. Usually you end up having experts cumulatively, you get together and you have like excellent, good, fair, poor. You'd have different ratings like that. And then you'd end up, averaging the scores of the people. Here you end up having how many people said it was good. And I feel like that seems really different than anything I've heard of. And when you end up not, when someone is unfamiliar, and then that means, well, you don't care, I have a problem thinking, well, you didn't care enough to go out there. Because it might actually be, an access problem for some people. Some people may not have boats or what have you. And I'm making this up, but imagine a commercial person who finds one of these little dink bays somewhere that are in yellow currently. I can't really get in there. That's not commercially viable for me, even if it was. And so I just wonder about the validity of something that basically is rating, I don't know, as this is not significant. You have a count of 7, a 6. I got 6. The score is 6. Well, 6 is kind of low on the significant because our body here usually, well, if is it 1 to 5, it's like, not good enough. 6 to 10 is great. Well, a 6, what does that mean? It means 6 people think this is significant. And maybe 3 didn't, and 2 people, I don't know, I couldn't get there. And so I feel like I have a problem with that. But so I guess I'm wondering, here's my question to you. What is the origin of the protocol where the scores are simply the sum of the people that voted good as opposed to bad? Where did that come from? Is there precedent?
So again, this started in 2000. I'm not sure actually where Tom Marcotti, the previous shellfish biologist, got this from. What I have done is research on other towns to see how they're doing these sorts of things. And I think the idea behind it was that if you have someone saying, oh, I want to rate this between 1 and 10, you have some people thinking 7 is good. And in my opinion, 7 might not be as good. So it's even more subjective if you do it that way.
But if you end up having a excellent, good, like a 4, 3, 2, 1, you can look at it that way. And as long as you know that a 4 was an excellent, or is it 5 and you break it up? It doesn't, because obviously, what is 6 passing and what's a 3, you know? I mean, that's the old high school problem, but.
Right, and we also, well, one of the things about this is that we have it in, it's in the regulations, an actual number. So, under Chapter 703, if we go in here, we're actually going to see that the general ordinances of the code of the town of Barnstable, so any area rated 6 or above on any maps and reports developed by Natural Resources Division and filed with the commission and the town clerk shall be presumptively considered high-value shellfish area. So that number is pretty important, having an actual number value based on there rather than excellent, good, fair, poor. Not saying that we can't change this in the future. We've had these debates every time we've done this, and we're definitely open to other ideas.
I could be long gone in 10 years, and my words will be not remembered, but it's like, I just, the reg does say that. It does say that, but that was probably predicated on the fact that you were doing it this way, and you had a score of 1 to 10.
Yes.
Whereas, so the law is fitting what you did.
I would assume
And
so as well.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's right or couldn't be changed, so. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. One thing I just want to mention that if John is here, he would kind of mention that in the previously, in a couple of court cases, that we recognize, or the court has recognized 6 as a significant shellfish area. And that's why we assigned a 30-inch rule for that. If it is less than 6, then it's a 12-inch rule. So there is some significance in terms of the court ruling. That's why we're going that way. So, Luis?
Let's see, I come from the photographic industry, and we, for years and years, did analyses of various products under development, and we rated pictures for quality, photographic images, and we used a scale of 1 to 10. And if you have a big enough sample size, it is a powerful tool. They're subjective judgments, but given the variability, if you've got enough people involved, it works. But in terms of yes, no kind of thing that you're using now, it's not clear to me that that would be as effective as asking your judges to rate 1 to 10. But what I would like to address is what you do with the data once you've got it from your panel. And I'm concerned that we ignore the not significant or not familiar vote that you get from your panel, because I think it's pretty relevant. If it's something that people aren't familiar with, it could be a question of it's someone's secret spot, as Bill said. It could be inaccessible, and so people say they either are not familiar with it because they haven't been there, or they just don't go there very often because of location. And there are a number of reasons why people might not be familiar. And something, saying something is not significant versus not familiar, those are very different messages that you get from the judge. So I would like to see, if possible, consideration of folding that into your bottom line. If you take the situation you talked about, it came out a 7. There are several ways you can get to a 7. 7, yes, I am familiar, and then various combinations of not significant or significant. I think maybe there are 5 ways that can get put together to give you, with those 7 significant votes, a 7. And they all send different messages. So there are pretty simple mathematical ways that you can normalize your data for what is going on beyond the votes that are significant. If you have a great area for shellfishing, but only 7 people know of it, that can never get to be a 10 in the way that you do the data. So I think it would be really interesting to take some area and recalculate the data, normalizing it, and I can give you one way of doing that, and comparing it with what you have now. And you could take, you know, the data from 2011 and massage it and see how you come out, because I think that you will come out with a more meaningful set of answers if you include the votes other than significant. And what will happen is that as you normalize it, you're going to have a wider spread of results from something now that will just give you a plain old 7.
I think what we would also see there is that the numbers from this study are going to be very similar from 2011, because so many were not familiar with the area in 2011. So if you were able to normalize the data, this year might not be as much of a shock.
That's right. You would have a better explanation of what happened and why. So that's another reason for doing it. And if you need any assistance in that, I would be happy to work with you.
Thank you so much.
Larry, and then I'll go to Bill.
Hi, Liz. I, too, have a raspy throat. I've got a lot of questions to ask, but I'm going to try to limit them for the moment. One of them relates to the fact that you prepared a survey, I believe, for people that you were going to try to get involved to be on this committee. Is that correct?
A survey in terms of what they were filling out, or the people that we chose?
Both. Both.
The people that we chose were just, we sat down as natural resources and we went through people that we thought would fit the role well. As far as what they had to fill out, Nina, if you could pull up that example, please. So we do have an example of what exactly each one of the members were asked to fill out. And Nina will pull that up. So each area, as you can see, was separated different particular areas along the shoreline. And that initial peer committee, from my understanding, did regularly meet, and they decided where they wanted those areas to stop and start. So they're the ones that came up with the segments, and they go out to 200 feet. So they're saying that habitat within that small section. So each one of these sections, you can see the folks, if you scroll down, Nina, you'll see at the bottom, the members just had to check a box for each one of the shorelines. So they would look at MB 27 and they say, okay, I know that area. They say significant, or not familiar, and they just check the box.
Okay. Now, this you want to call that, what are you calling it, a survey or a questionnaire? How are you referring to it? So,
Sure, we can call it a survey.
all right. Okay. In that regard, then, was there any other testing that was done, any scientific testing or measurements or doing anything other than going and visually looking at it?
So all of this for the individuals on the working group, it was their knowledge. So either historical or their either they're commercial shellfishers or recreational shellfishers. Some of them may have gone out to the area. A lot of them are regularly working the area, or they've known the area for over 40 years. So I can't tell you how many actually went out to the spot and went digging around, but it was not based on the current standing stock that is there. It is based on historical and the habitat, not just the animals that are present.
Now, these particular surveys, they were 10 members on your committee, and I don't know who they were. I mean, I've looked at the list, but Amy was one, I remember. But in this regard, were there more than 10 people that applied? And did you narrow the list down?
We reached out to several people, and a couple of them, because it is a lot of work, declined. So actually, one of them was, fortunately, Dave Ryan, who is a consultant. He was kind enough to offer his services. So we had some people chosen that then could not fulfill the role.
That's fine. Now, the surveys, did the people meet before going? Did your group meet in advance and discuss them before, or were they just mailed to them?
They were just mailed to them. Several of them had already been members before, so they've done this before. But this survey was just mailed to them with an email, and that paperwork that you have in front of you describes everything, the history, and everything that they need to do to complete the survey. There was no actual meeting that happened.
Okay, now in that regard, these surveys that came back, are they available for you to provide to us for us to get a better understanding of the manner in which they were filled out and the content?
I absolutely can. I cannot provide names. Everyone needs to be anonymous for these.
Put a first initial, whatever you want to do, so you can know which one we're talking about.
Yep, but you can
do that,
have the raw data.
Okay, all right. Now, I want to go back to one thing in your last summer's letter, where you said, during the summer of 2015, well, let me go back a minute. First of all, the last really big review was in 2011, is that right, when Dennis was the chair?
That was for the 3-bay system, was the
Correct.
2011.
Yeah, and that time, so there were no major studies between 2011 and now, is that fair to say?
Not for the 3-bay system.
Okay, and in that regard, there's reference in your last summer's letter that during 2015, which was only 4 years after that, Conservation Commission requested Natural Resources to undertake the task of reviewing significant shellfish habitat areas along the shorelines in the east southern embayments. Was there any actual meetings between the Natural Resources and anybody on commission, whether it's a member or a staff? You know anything about that at all?
All I can refer to is that was for a different embayment than the 3 bays, and we're requested to update these every so often. So that particular embayment was it was due, as it's due every 10 years. So that embayment came 10 years after the 2005 study.
Okay, but were there people that this committee met with that included this? We're in a public meeting today.
Yes.
Were there people that were included? Were the members of the commission or staff members that conversed with Natural Resources back in 2015 about this?
I believe that the shellfish biologist communicated with the Conservation Department.
Okay, by department you just mean staff?
Yes.
Okay, is that something you can verify?
I can make a phone call to verify it, but again, that I might not be able to verify that.
Oh, I understand. All right. So you've already acknowledged that each of the individual people who did this survey, some of them may have actually done some on-site testing or whatever, and some of them were based upon their recommendations. And I appreciate the way both Louise and Bill, and I'm sure Pete's going to come in also, and George, have zeroed in on some of these issues and variables. I too am concerned about a lot of this, but I'm going to reserve a lot of questions for a lot of other times. But in this particular case, I'm going to defer and let other people, and maybe we'll come in and cover some more today before we're done. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Bill?
I just want to go back to the 1 to 10. You raised a really good point, Tom, when you said, we've won some cases where we were defending a situation in which something was rated 6 to 10. And I guess I'm just thinking that a 6 means 6 out of 10 people voted for something, and we don't know what the other people did. Some of them may have been unfamiliar. And a 10 means, boy, everyone ended up saying it's significant. I feel like you could still retain a 1 to 10, but if people were to say, well, a 10 means this, and a 9 and an 8 means this, and a 6 and a 7 means this, and a blah, 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 you could still end up having something where you know that a 7, the group at large thinks that a 7, yeah, it's not the supreme habitat, but it's good habitat. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we could retain that. I just find it really odd to have it being the number of people who said it was good and the rest are like, well, we didn't go there, or perhaps. So I think we could revise it. I'm not suggesting either that we have to revise this now. You've already done the study, but I wish someone would bear in mind, and in 10 years when you redo it, consider that methodology. Thanks.
Any other comment from the commission on peak?
Yeah, I've got some institutional memory on this as well. My papa goes back to 1990. Camp Dresser and McGee report, Coastal Resources Management Plan for the town of Barnstable. Identified resources in our town, natural resources that deserve protection for the long-term viability of recreational and commercial shell fishing and our tourist industry. I know all of you remember or know that I've got a PhD in sediment biogeochemistry with published papers in peer-reviewed journals where I did the identification of the mollusks and other invertebrates in the bottom. There is a huge amount of shoreline here. To expect any kind of scientific assessment on a even 10 meter by 10 meter length is ludicrous. What we have here is keeping it simple, Sally, and I could use another word besides Sally on that. It's all refutable. This rating is refutable. This is a starting point with experts that we have in this town. I knew Tom Marcotti personally. He's still on this. Liz has come in. She's bringing good science in on this. This is a starting point. But anyone in front of us can refute the rating, bring in the evidence, bring in the science. And it has been done, both for positive and negative. And frankly, it's pretty easy. And I'm speaking in as an expert here in sediment biogeochemistry. It's pretty easy to tell when sediment is crap for the commercial shellfish that we are interested in. It's really easy. It's got high sulfides, it's got a lot of organic matter, it's very fluid, and it's pretty easy actually to also tell likely good habitat. It is aerated sediment, it's got good grain size analysis, and maybe you'll actually find some shellfish there as well. So keeping it simple, I think, provides a wonderfully easy starting point, which has a historical rating that we've been using for over 20 years, and it goes all the way back to our town trying to manage a valuable coastal resource, which came out of the Camp Dresser and McGee report for the compiled for Docs and Peers review that my papa was on back in the end of the 90s. And yeah, it's refutable. So bring the evidence in if you don't like the rating.
As part of the as peer applications, we require the applicants to conduct the shellfish study for that area specifically. And then we also ask Liz to do that separate study so that we have both study results to look at. And this rating is another tool to assist us to look at the rating. That's how we use the data to determine what is the shellfish rating in that particular area. Do we have to argue about the result and so forth? We have the data to, to confirm for us. So this is one of the tools for us. George?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and keep it simple, too. So you started in 2000 with the first group. In 2011, how much did that group change?
I do have it here. Give me a moment.
No problem.
I see 3 different people.
Okay, thank you. So we've gone to changing 3 to this year. There's quite a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe? There's 6 or 7, I can't. But I guess my point is, so in 2000, you stated one of the reasons why you think that this rating might have gone up was because of the change in the participation. In 2000, it appeared to me that about 75% of the 3 Bay Area was significant. In 2011, that went to approximately 85%, to now we're about 95%. So I guess my question is, given the tremendous amount of increase in boat traffic since 2000, the increase in docks, which are, we all know are real bad, docks, boating, we have tremendous increase in exotics, which we've been told many times are horrible for shellfish areas. How is it possible that we've gone from 75% to 95%?
So that is why I came up with that second theory, because I think that people now, knowing all these docks that are going in and all these things that are happening, they're looking at the spaces between. You still have, a certain footprint that the dock goes in.
Yep.
And for a lot of those people, they're saying, okay, well, that's out of the fishery, just merely by the space that it's taking up. A steamer can't go where that piling is now. But when you look at all the areas, that huge amount of area, you're not looking at just the area that's taken up by the pier. You're looking at the spaces between that are able to be fished.
That doesn't make sense to me, because now the same area that used to be an 8 is now a 10 because...
They're finding it more important to them than it ever has been before.
Okay.
They're worried that there's going to be more piers put in that area if they don't say it's significant. That's just my theory. I can't speak for them.
But that's not really based on what the area is. It's based on what this area does for me.
It has shellfish that they need to harvest for their livelihood.
I understand.
And
We're
so
trying
it
to
is
make this
subjective.
yeah, it's very subjective.
It
Okay,
is.
thank you.
Yep, right in that piece of paperwork that you have. It says right there, as it always has, that this is a subjective analysis where each individual needs to look at recreational, commercial, scientific, management, or other basis, historical content to come up with if they deem the area significant or not.
Are you all set, George?
Yes.
Larry?
One of the things that is always brought up at our hearings dealing with contamination issues, and one of the main functions that your department deals with are those issues. We're dealing with the fact that what are the sources that bring these problems in? And I think if you had a show of hands anywhere, you're going to just say nitrogen and septic systems draining into the aquifers, whatever. And those matters appear not to have been touched. If they were, they weren't included. So I think that we're looking at multiple sources that have to be evaluated, and how do those get weighed? Who does that? It's a burden on volunteers. It's a burden on consultants who are already involved in the process. You say that shell fishermen are concerned about losing areas where they can harvest shellfish. Consultants are at risk for losing their business if they can't work there. It works both ways. And one other thing I want to mention to you, and I've provided a list to all the commissioners, and I'll be glad to give it to anybody else that wants it. It's about a 4 or 5 page document that takes every reg I could identify in this town, whether it was administrative code under the town council, which you operate under, or whether it's one of the ordinances, which is 237, or whether it's a regulation under the commission. And I said, I look for words. I look for ratings. I look for all the other words that are thrown into this. And there's a term in the legal concept. 2 lawyers are sitting here. They know exactly what I'm talking about. The word is nexus. There has to be a connection between these things. The regulation structure, as it currently exists, is abominable. Nothing connects to anything. So if you raise a certain issue that you want, go looking for it. How are you going to define it? Certain things in our chapter, it was brought up in 2011. One of the commissioners, who is unnamed in the minutes, said, well, we need to get these concepts together. That was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. It hasn't been done. It's time to do it now. And it's time to be a consensus. People who volunteer and spend their time, I put in tons of hours behind the scenes. Okay, so those are kind of the issues, and you are too. I don't doubt you, because I know how you think. Okay, so that being the case, these are some of the issues that are causing us concern. The concern is not to kill your project, it's to make it viable. And so far, in my opinion, you're not there.
So if I am able to speak, Chair.
Go ahead.
My concern is the shellfish and the shell fishery. So that is where this is coming from.
Understand.
And this is just one tool in the toolbox that we use. The consultants have their tools in the toolbox. And it was really great that we were able to get a consultant on this working group, because they're representing those other ideas well. But we had to set those aside because we're thinking just about the shell fishery. So this is just one tool, and it gives us a starting point. Okay, this is a 6. Okay, we're thinking it's decent habitat, but it's not the best. And that is when we go out and we do surveys to see what's happening. We're going to get that historical context from this rating, which is really where a lot of those numbers came from as well. Maybe it isn't great right now, but maybe it really was, and they're hoping it comes back. That could be part of it as well. But this is just one tool that we're able to use, and there's so many other ones that are out there. So I don't want this to be, it's not the end-all be-all. There's so many other things that we need to take into account. This is just looking at the shellfish. When you're looking at the issues that happen with pollution or boats bringing up, extra nutrients and things like that, that's separate from this. This is just about the shell fishery and the shellfish habitat.
It's going to be difficult to separate those things. That's going to take communication. I'm confident we can do it, but I respect and appreciate your point of view, and I'm not here to undermine what you're doing. I'm here to clarify it. Okay?
I welcome the clarity.
Thank you, Larry. Louise?
Yeah, I guess I would echo what Liz just said, and also Pete, in that this is a starting point. It's rebuttable. And on every peer application that I have participated in within the last few years, both the town and the applicant present a shellfish analysis to either support or raise some questions about the conclusions from that shellfish map. So it's a basis, and it's not the be-all, end-all bottom line. So just that. The other comment I would make is that in the subjective analysis that I've been talking about in terms of, as opposed to a yes or a no kind of process, which you're using now, if you talk about a 1 to 10, where do you see this? you need to have areas or, areas, shellfish areas that are both, some that are both 10s and some that are zeros, so that you have the whole range for the judges to consider. And I haven't had time to study your maps to see if you have that whole range represented in terms of an opportunity for the judges to evaluate, because you really need that in order to make that process work.
I think one way that we can take that into account is that if we see, it becomes a lot of work to do all these areas at once for the volunteers. But if you look at Shoestring and Pompanesett, we've seen a lot of piers go in there because that bottom is just muck. You have a lot of zeros in that area, and many of the same people have seen that or know that, and so it's more looking at the town as a whole to get those numbers. 3 bays, with the exception of some areas, as much as the water quality isn't that great, and you see bottoms turning in some areas, there's still a lot of workable areas, and so that is done separate because it's so large from Pompanesett and Shoestring, where you have a lot of those zeros.
Right, except you're using the yes/no process as opposed to a spectrum of 1 to 0 to 10, actually.
Yep.
Which is a different thing.
And maybe it would be helpful if, along with these numbers, if you actually had the 3 numbers. So you have significant, comma, what was voted as not significant, comma, what is voted as someone didn't know. So you can all make that determination, oh, look, 3 people didn't know, if that
Okay.
would be helpful.
But you need to include the significant and not familiar in how you massage the data, right?
Yes.
And you're not really doing that. You're really only counting the yeses, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
Be-
Thank you.
Yeah, Louise, I completely agree, but I wouldn't call it massaging the data. I would just say presenting to us the unadulterated data. You know, who doesn't know it, who doesn't think it's very good, not worth worrying about, and who thinks it's worth worrying about. Those 3 numbers, I completely agree, but I just wouldn't call it massaging because it's just the raw number.
The analysis of the data, maybe I shouldn't say massage, but the analysis.
Exactly,
the
exactly,
treatment-
exactly.
the
I
treatment
agree.
Of the data,
I agree.
yeah.
Let's wrap up here because we have a lot of discussion and we have a few more workshop on this stuff. So thanks for Liz and Lena.
Just I hear a lot of talk about reevaluating the data with your idea, Louise. Is that something that you want us to do for the next discussion, or are we just going to continue? Like, we just want to know what you need for our next meeting.
Well, I would like to see, on a limited basis, perhaps, as opposed to,
The whole thing.
huge project, some comparisons between a normalized treatment of the data versus what is reported now, and see if it is useful or not.
Okay.
Maybe you look at it and say, I didn't learn anything more than just the process that's been going on since 2000.
All right, we
That
can
would
do
be
that.
something to
We
know.
can compare
That's a
that
good
with maybe 11,
suggestions.
which was an excellent suggestion. Maybe a subset of the 2011 data and the 2022 data.
If we perhaps take just one of these sheets and work
Right.
with that throughout the years.
Right.
I think part
Excellent.
of it, Nina, is that we're learning how you're thinking and how you're describing it. That to me has been the big positive today. But so for us to guide you and tell you what you may be able to do, it's, does the open meeting law prevent us from having those kinds of conversations? I don't know. But I think that to the extent that one or more of you can identify with one or more of us to kick some ideas around, is that viable? I don't know. I've given up on how to interpret those laws. But I think that if we have these open conversations, then we will come up with a better understanding. And I'm very impressed with what I've gotten from this side of that rail right there. And I'm also impressed with what you're saying. So, wasn't a lost cause on a
Yeah, I think this
partly
is
sunny Tuesday.
Thank you, Larry. I think this is a very good format, and we definitely welcome this type of discussion, trying to hone these maps and to be more useful for the commission. So I think Liz and I can go back and play with this a little bit, and we hear your concerns, and certainly we'll have another go at it. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. The second item under the old new business is the 2022 monitoring report for scuttling projects. And as I mentioned, these three reports are going to be tabled to May the 2nd. Under revised plan, Brian Colby and Tracy Ryans, 220 Bay Street, Austinville, SE3-5X07. Chuck?
Good
Is your
afternoon.
mic on?
It should be. Can you hear me? Chuck Rowland, Sullivan Engineering Consulting. I'll run over the cover page until Darcy gets the. That's all right. So during construction of the rear patio, some additional patio and retaining walls were built along with a smaller walkway in the front in the 50-foot buffer. This had a net increase of 195 square feet in the 50-foot buffer, which equates to about a 6% change from the overall approved hardscape in the 50-foot buffer on this project. To offset the added hardscape, we've added over 3,000 square feet of mitigation, and this more than compensates. This is way more than your 4-to-1 requirement. Additionally, some of the additional mitigation plantings were planted closer to the water in the area of the approved path. Instead of replanting the mitigation areas, the applicant is requesting the path be shifted north 3 feet. Since this is not a change.
I'm sorry, it decides to try to do an update right now.
We feel that it's a fairly minor change. I don't know if you guys need it on the projector to make a decision. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
We have the plans in here. Any question from the commission on this? None?
I thought it was very clear, Chuck. I looked at it, drove down a couple of times to walk the property and then look through the fence to see it. And it was pretty clear to me that you'd made some minor changes, but they had no impact, no noticeable impact at all. That's
Great.
how I saw it.
Could I have a motion to approve the revised plan?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All done.
Unanimous.
The second one is 210 Carriage Road Nominal Trust, 210 Carriage Road, Austinville, SE3-5993. Chuck?
Chuck Rowland, Sullivan Engineering Consulting. I'm representing the Marshall and Green Trust at 210 Carriage Road. So this project was brought before you and approved for a round pool in the middle of the lot. The approved plan is dated with a revision date of September 13th, and our plan has a date of March 22nd, 2023. So the change of the project is we're going to be restoring the existing pool with a smaller patio all in the same location, because we're keeping the pool with essentially they're refinishing the Pebble Tech. The project also incorporated 8,100 square feet of bank restoration and invasive removal, which is well underway by Wilkinson Ecological, and we have a native planting area of 1,684 square feet, which is the required mitigation using your 3-to-1 and 4-to-1 calculations. happy to take any questions you might have.
Any questions? Louise?
My recollection is that in this proposal, there was a lot of discussion and concern about the location of the chickens. Yes?
There, I think there was, yes.
Pardon?
So, yes, there was.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to make sure they didn't get moved in this plan.
So it's being shifted back to where it was originally.
Well,
so-
then that could be a problem, for me at least.
Okay?
Because
happy to-
we were worried about debris, shall we say, from the chickens being close to the resource area and being a source of nitrogen, et cetera. I'm looking at your plan and I'm not seeing where the chickens ended up.
It's on the south side, the existing hen enclosure. I don't see why we couldn't shift that to the west to get it out of the 50-foot buffer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we want that out of it.
I'm happy to work with the landscape designer and the owner to shift that, if that's
Well,
your,
Can we ask you to get back to Darcy or staff on that to make sure that it ends up in a acceptable location? Because that was a pretty important issue for us when we talked about this earlier.
Any
yeah, we're
other
happy to
question?
do that.
Any other question? Pete?
Yes, I just want to congratulate Louise for getting that, because, yeah, you're right, Louise. We don't want the nitrogen that close in
Right.
there, so thank you very much.
So on the projector, Kim, I don't want to get you. So this is the hen enclosure, and so if you want, we can shift it so it's outside of the 50-foot
Yeah.
buffer.
Yeah. Can you do that and then submit the revised plan again to make sure that you move
Yeah,
it out?
we're happy to do that.
Yep.
So we're not continuing this. We're,
No, we're voting.
we're,
Can that be approved with
Okay.
submission of the
Yeah.
revised plan?
What?
what's happening with this proposal? Are we going, approving it and letting Darcy interact with?
We can approve it, but you'll be subject to submit a revised plans to show the relocations of the chicken coop.
Right.
Right. Could I have a motion to approve the revised plans?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. The third one is Liam and Amy Griffin, SE3-5909, 191 Seaview Avenue, Osterville. Chuck?
Chuck Rowland, Sullivan Engineering Consulting, representing the Griffins at 191 Seaview Ave. So John highlighted this one that came through on the scanner. So we left the work limit in its original place to show that where the previously approved mitigation is and the new added mitigation to account for the proposed spa and fire pit and patio. So spa, fire pit and patio, and then I can really just barely see it, but there's the work limit. And then we have the added mitigation on this side, and then a little added mitigation up there to compensate for the added hardscape. With this revision, we are still less than what was existing at the time of the original proposal for hardscape in the 0 to 50-foot buffer with, I think, a fairly complete mitigation planting of the area. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Question from the commissioner? None? Could I have a motion to approve the revised plans?
So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yep. The last one is New Rushy Mars Realty LLC, 1541 Main Street, Contour SC 3-5767.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. Mike Ford here for the applicant as their counsel. Again, pinch hitting for Sean Reardon, the engineer who submitted this. This is the McCourt Farm at 1541 Main Street and involves the order of conditions that a few moments ago you extended for an additional 3-year period, the Japanese pavilion and Japanese garden. What is proposed as you enter the farm off of Main Street, on the left-hand side are two things. One that are new, a sculpture of which there is a markup. It is a sculpture that is 30 feet long, 4 feet wide, and will involve 5-foot trench depth to put in a reinforced concrete footing. And then the sculpture, of which there was a bench drawing in the papers that we gave you, of the size that I indicated, will be installed by a crane on that footing. The other thing that's happening that was not, or proposed to happen, that was not shown on the original plan, is the planting of a 15-inch in diameter weeping willow just beyond the sculpture on the left-hand side of the farm road as you enter in. Because the sculpture is in an area, it's in a grass area, but it's in the 0 to 50 buffer, it would trigger the need for additional mitigation. Mr. Reardon did prepare 2 tables. It's table 2 you really need to focus on, but the tables were combined in the initial submittal. And the 0 to 50 for stonewall paver features would increase by 48 square feet. So it would go from 137 to 185 in that area. There's the 4-to-1 mitigation. And so the required mitigation would go up to 740 square feet. The mitigation as part of the project already approved is multiples of that. And so we'd suggest that there is adequate mitigation for this. This is a feature that obviously will not be interactive like a spa or a fire pit or something, but is an artistic piece that the owner is excited about and hopes to have the ability to install it on the side of the farm road as you go in that location. And I'm happy to take questions.
Question from the commissioner?
Yeah.
Darcy?
So you are proposing a 15-inch diameter weeping willow to be the mitigation plant?
No, we're suggesting, Darcy, I believe what Sean did on the table, the mitigation summary table that was part of the original order of conditions, he increased the mitigation requirement by 4 times the 48 square feet, which is the size of the, and showed that we have more than sufficient mitigation to cover that already.
Okay,
So
so
we
this is
weren't
just
proposing, we were just seeking permission to plant that 15-inch willow
Okay.
just after the sculpture as you come in on the drive.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Could I go down as an abstained on that?
Huh?
I would abstain. I feel very mixed, and I don't want to vote no, but I don't want to vote for it.
So it's 5-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 6 enforcement order. I'll open up the first 2 together because the address is the same. Over F and M Bartlett trustee and M Bartlett Living Trust, 375 Baxter Neck Road, Marston's Mill, map 075 parcel 007.004, alteration of 2 wetland resource area, coastal bank and land subject to coastal storm flowage by cutting and pruning several trees without permit, and alteration of a wetland resource area, land under the oceans by installing an unpermitted jet ski float and failing to comply with an ongoing conditions of a Certificate of Compliance, SE 3-3649. The second read as Marston's Mills Realty Trust, a real estate, LLC, a Florida limited liability company, 375 Baxter Neck Road, Marston's Mill, map 075, parcel 007.004, alteration of 2 wetland resource area, coastal bank and land subject to coastal storm flowage. By cutting and pruning several trees without permits and alteration of a wetland resource area, land under the oceans by installing an unpermitted jet ski float and failing to comply with ongoing conditions of its Certificate of Compliance, SE 3-3649. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This came into the commission during a routine inspection of I believe the property was under contract for, it had been sold, and at the time, the person that brought this to our attention was the buyer of the property. But the property hadn't transferred title at that point, so this is the reason why we have 2 enforcement orders for this. So the first one was issued to Mr. Barrett because he was the owner of record at the time. After the property transferred, about 2 weeks after this was brought to our attention, the Marston's Mills Real Estate LLC is the buyer, and the enforcement order was transferred then to the new homeowner. It's pretty straightforward. As soon as this works here. You have the dock itself. As far as it looks like it's all in compliance. The only issue with the dock was this jet ski float that was over on that had been attached or is in the same proximity to the pier. There was no jet ski float that was approved for that project originally. The other issue surrounded some very, very mild cutting that had gone on the bank itself. And so if you can see here on the right photo, there is a little bit of trimming of the shrubs. This one, pitch pine, was heavily pruned, and there were a couple of smaller trees that were that had been cut. Again, the bank itself is remarkably stable. However, there was some issues with the cutting that occurred again without permit. So what we're asking then, the first portion for Mr. Barrett, who is the former owner, it's my understanding that there is a working agreement between the 2 parties, seller and buyer. Mr. Barrett will take care of getting all of the compliance taken care of. So we are working on April 12th deadline to remove the jet ski float from the area. They're also going to do some limited planting to replace the 2 trees that had been cut down. It was a total of 9 inches of tree that was cut. And then in terms of the pitch pine that had been severely pruned, instead of trying to find room for any more trees on the bank and destabilizing the bank as a result, we've asked that he replace them with 4 2 to 3 gallon shrubs spread around that general area. And then he was also to let us know who was the new property owner, which they did. And we are working very quickly toward compliance. They're working on getting the float removed. That should be coming up in the next week or so. And then as far as the planting goes, I'm going to be meeting with the landscaper to go over the planting plan for that. next week on site. So I expect everything to be recovered and planted by the end of May at the latest. And both parties are working diligently to get everything back into compliance as quickly as possible. So I don't see any issues with this one.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for working with Ed on this matter. Any question for Ed? No? Larry?
I just want to make sure, Ed, that in this instance, that the buyer doesn't have any ongoing responsibilities other than the agreement with Mr. Barrett.
That's right. I mean, they will be, if they want any kind of information in terms of the species that are growing, but the two parties have worked everything out between themselves, and they have both agreed, and they're both here. Mr. Barrett is here, as well as Attorney Kilroy, representing Marston's Mills Real Estate LLC. So,
Okay.
but you can certainly ask them if they have any issues with that.
Well, I think if they do, they'll tell me if they've got any issues. I take it there's no issues to concern. Is that right? Bernie?
No issues.
Okay,
Carl,
all right,
no.
thank you.
I just would like to know, once everything's back in shape, do we get some sort of report from the commission? Or
Once everything's in the ground, I can go ahead and issue a statement saying that the enforcement order has been complied with.
Okay, thank you.
Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? It's approved. Thank you. The second and the third enforcement order is Mark Palmer, 85 Ames Way, Centerville, map 189, parcel 007, alterations of a wetland resource area bordering vegetated wetlands and 50-foot buffer to a wetland resource area, BVW, by cutting vegetations and trees and placing fill, wood chips.
You can go ahead and sit.
Do you want to have a seat? Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been working its way through to get to this point. This originated from a anonymous neighborhood complaint. Let's see. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but Ames Way is up here right off of 28. The property in question is right here. It used to be an old fish hatchery, fish farm many, many years ago.
It wasn't a hatchery.
Not a hatchery, okay. The center of the complaint comes around the section right here in the northeast corner. There was some cutting and some wood chips that had been deposited within the buffer and just slightly into the BVW. Let me just show you some pictures here. Again, I'm standing on Ames Way at this point here, looking toward the resource area, and then this is looking down Ames Way to the northwest. And you can see there is a series of systems that are running from Flowing Mill Pond up here to the north and east, down through along under Ames Way, and then continues on down through out eventually out to the Bumps River. And so it's this area, this small area here, that's been impacted with the wood chips. All right, so what I'm asking is that the wood chips just be cleaned up and raked up, removed from the buffer area at this point. I have not had a chance to visit the site yet, but we are scheduled to meet on site tomorrow. So if I do run into anything more, we'll have to handle that with a separate order. But just so you understand, there was some history, another complaint back in 2017. At the time, my predecessor, Martin Wonderly, had also visited the site at that time and didn't notice any violations as far as wetlands go. So I think this is probably the limit. I couldn't see anything else from where I was standing.
The first complaint he's talking about.
Make sure your mic is on. And
Can I address the first complaint he's talking about in the past? the assessor's office didn't put the second half of the lot
Okay.
on the map. So I have a neighbor, I can give you the patrol, the detective or whatever was handling it. He's made so many false complaints with the police department, the health department, and the building department, that they all had a meeting and stuff. But, so there wasn't, he was complaining, looking at a map that wasn't showing the second part of the lot, going, I had stuff on, that wasn't on my lot.
Okay.
And there were no
They
issues
haven't,
that were.
they still haven't
that were-
added the second part of the lot on. The assessor's
But that
office.
was, that's not the enforcement order that he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that had nothing to do with this, and, I mean, there was nothing found inappropriate for the, as far as wetlands are concerned during that. That was just more for history than anything else.
Right, right.
I'd just like to say, whatever you want me to do there, a ditch that the town's running, it's an agricultural ditch, the mill pond, Fuller Mill Pond, that was built after World War II for the cranberry bogs they built. It runs down into an overflow, across in a culvert, and now they've run so much stormwater into the ditch, the agricultural ditch, off the road, that the bed of the ditch is above the top of the culvert. So the overflow pond, or whatever you want to call it, on the other side, it's not really supposed to be a pond, it stays 2 feet higher constantly. Farther up on Fox Hill Road, there's, the town owns all the way to the bog, there's a culvert there. So it's been clogged since before Donnie Coombs died. So the water can't flow out there naturally, so it's flowing the way it's supposed to. So it's flowing all through the cranberry bogs and wiping out the ditches there. So the cranberry bogs are all maxed up with the amount of water they can hold, and everything's maxed up, backed up there. As I know it doesn't have to do, like, say, with what I did, I didn't realize I'll do whatever, plant whatever and stuff. I mean, it's gonna be hard to remove a lot. There's mycelium already and all the wood chips and stuff. So, like, they're already cleaning up the water and stuff, but it's already, after I talked to Ed, I went to the back of my property, which is the beginning of Bumps River, and it's already silted up 8 inches over this winter.
Thank
I
you.
thought there was a dam.
Yeah.
I thought it was dammed up. It's silted up 8 inches. It's smothering out. Bumps River behind me, it's got drowned. There's already trees in the marsh behind me. The town land that's drowning because of the raise in the water table and stuff. And I've talked to people. DTW just like told me someone always bitches.
Well,
and
thank
stuff.
you. Thank you. We can only look at the enforcement order with the wood chips issues. And, you know,
All they gotta do to get rid of some of the silt is put a board across the culvert on the other side and dig the silt in what you saw there that runs parallel to the road. But, you know, the other solution would be,
yep.
where this is put something to catch the sand before, the silt, before it goes into it. And I'm willing to work.
Yeah.
And stuff, and, you want a demonstration garden for Cape Cod natives? I'll plant whatever you want there.
Well, in this enforcement order, we are not asking you to do any planting, just raking the wood chips and remove it from the buffer. That's all we're asking. We're not asking for you to do any planting. And you're concerning with the drainage and all that is not
But there's
outside our
wood chips
jurisdictions.
there from
Yeah.
10 years ago. It's all mycelium and
Okay.
it's
so
already
I'll be-
incorporated.
I would be glad to take a look at those
And
issues as well.
What happened was that I didn't realize I couldn't do anything there, and I was letting a tree company dump one load at the back, and they dumped a whole bunch, and then I said, you got it, they dumped it near the road, I said, you gotta push it uphill, and one guy must have been the owner's son or something, got pissed off and knocked some more towards
Well-
the ditch.
Thank you, but just work with Ed to remove the wood chips.
I'll meet with you tomorrow at 10, right? We're still good to meet tomorrow?
Yeah, there, I'll remove, like I say, I'll remove
Okay.
the wood chips. I don't want to do anything else.
Okay, yeah, we'll,
I don't want to walk around, do anything. I just want to,
Yep.
take care of that spot.
okay, I'll meet you tomorrow then at 10.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank
Could
you.
I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
So moved, second.
All in favor? Is approved. Thank you.
What about saving Bumps River?
That's a different topic at different times, not from here at this point. So-
Who's ever gonna, like, as it silts up, it's only more expensive to, At one point, the drainage ditch, I would have been like, if, like, Trout Unlimited or something, turned it into like,
Well, if there's a
something, but
drainage
like now
problem,
it's-
if there is a drainage problem, contact DPW and go and see whether they can help you with.
they don't care. They don't care, that's a water supply. That swamp recharges the water supply in Lumbert Mill. And it's got layer of leaf, layer of silt, layer of leaves, layer of silt, to the point where I literally thought it was a log jam, like it was dammed up. But it's just the silt layer. Because
Okay.
when the
Thank you.
town went before to repave Ames there, they had an order to keep the profile and the layout the same, and they did. They tilted it more towards me. So all the water came to my side, and, I'd invite anyone to go out there and look at it in a heavy rain event. Every single storm drain, there aren't any on Ames, but the one on Birch Hill, Stony Cliff, even Deep Circle, which is practically flat.
Right.
Water just shoots right by them
Yeah.
and stuff. They
Yeah.
need like a
Thank
little
you.
lip or something to catch
Thank
them.
you enough. Let's move
All
on.
right. It's small money as opposed to like.
Thank you.
What a river restoration would cost, right?
Yeah.
Thank
The
you.
next enforcement order is Jason O'Toole, 25 River Road, Marston's Mill, map 078, parcel 002, alteration of the 50-foot and 100-foot buffer to a wetland resource area, vegetated wetland by cutting trees and placing fills, stones, and installation of an unpermitted fence. Ed?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is pretty straightforward here. We're over on 25 River Road. This is behind the cash market, if people are wondering where this is. There's a small pond area and vegetative wetland, bordering vegetative wetland that occurs behind the property here. You can see that this is a rough rendition of where the wetland boundary is. And you can see again that the corner of the house is just a little bit more than 50 feet away from the boundary. And again, the issues here are an unpermitted fence that got put in here and a stone driveway extension that got put in right next to the side of the building over here. Again, everything is outside the 50-foot. And just to show you the pictures, what that looks like, the stones again here, the stone driveway here, and the edge of the fence that runs up the property line along the sidewalk. So what we're asking then is that by May 1st, they either remove the fence and stones and restore the site to the original conditions, or try to seek to permit the stones, fence, and any other additions completed or planned within the 50 to 100-foot buffer by filing an after-the-fact RDA. Mr. O'Toole, I should mention, Mr. O'Toole was planning on being here, but he got called away for a business trip, and so he apologized. It was something that happened last minute. But Ryan is here. He's the landscaper, and I'm sure he'll answer any questions. I should also mention, when we talked about the trees, it turned out that the trees that were taken down were requested by the person's insurance company, and I do have a letter in the file that reflects that that fact. So the trees, the felled trees are not part of this anymore.
Thank you, Ed. Any question for Ed? No? Are you all set? You understand what you're asking to do?
Yes, we'll be filing that in the next week or so,
Okay,
the RDA.
thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next one is Carlet Coal Trust and Thomas M. Keane Jr., 160 Hackensack Road, Centerville, maps 252, parcel 144, alteration of 3 wetland resource area, bordering vegetated wetlands, BBW, inland banks, and shallow ponds by expanding and maintaining an unpermitted beach, placing filled stone rocks and slates and flat stones, unpermitted replacement of an in-ground wood steps with in-ground stone steps, and unpermitted pier, an alteration of the 50-foot buffer to 2 wetland resource area, BVW and shallow pond, by installing flagstone steps, unpermitted placement, replacement of wood in-ground steps with stones in-ground steps, and unpermitted removal of at least 2 trees with a DBH of greater than 5 inches, failed to request a certificate of compliance, SC3-0222 at.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is the longest alteration verbiage I've ever had to write. So thank you for getting through all of that. So again, we're over here on Huckins Neck Road. Shallow Pond is just to the north of the property. And again, some of the issues. So originally, and I'm hoping that everybody had a chance to read through the background information that was provided last week, because it certainly helps understand what's going on here. But again, Fred had actually gone out and had seen some variations in landscape that he thought were off, and when he did the initial investigation back in 2014, took all of the pictures that you see with the 2014 date, and you can see that the wood steps were pretty benign. They were just railroad ties across, and then grass in between. And sometime around 2021, 22, those steps came out, and they were replaced with a much more a much broader footprint in terms of stone and flagstone, and it runs all the way. Again, they also changed the retaining walls that were up here on the portion up toward the 100-foot line, and another retaining wall here with stone as well. There was some small vegetation changes here. This tree was taken out, and then the the flagstone steps or pathway was also put through here, through the entire backyard portion down to the water. Again, there were some railroad ties that were down to about this point, and then it was bare yard, and then some more railroad ties for steps again. But all of this was done without permit. Just to show you, this was a date unknown, I'm sorry, but this was sort of like a general shot from the deck area looking out at the time. This was a part of the Zillow ad, and this is more or less the same perspective, a little bit further down on the bank, but again, the stone steps continue all the way through and down into past the inland bank, through the buffer, up through the BBW, and down into the pond shore, where there's now a much more expanded beach here, and again, the pier. There was 2 trees that were taken down. This was the bigger of the trees. This was right in the middle of the backyard. In 2020, it was present, and in 2021, that was taken down. I should say that Mr. Keene had purchased the property. He's owned the property twice. First back in 2012, and then again I'm not remember, I don't remember the date now, but it was, I think it was 2016. Yeah, 2016.
And then bought it again in 20.
Okay. And then, again, same perspective, and just to give you an idea, just for a frame of reference, because the seasonality and everything changes, and the type of camera changes, but if you keep an eye on this tree and the feature on this tree here and here, so it's the same tree. And again, this was taken back in October of 2014, so there were clearly some pond shore vegetation, emergent vegetation here. There's no real notice of any real beach here. I did check with Fred today and was asking to make sure that if there had been a beach present in 2014, Fred would have taken a picture of the beach. So, and if there was sand there, it was a very minor exposure of sand, and certainly not something like this where you have the stones carving out part of the bank, and inland bank, and these pea stone type stones filling the beach area. And again, this is looking the other way from the middle, about the middle or end of the beach. Again, the stones coming down, the stone steps coming down. And again, just for a frame of reference, you've got some little piles from the seasonal pier that you can see here, just to give you an idea. Again, the bank, this portion of the bank itself is still pretty well vegetated. No real big issues with that. And then finally, we're looking, and again, if you read through the background, there was a small quote-unquote beach that had been recognized as pre-existing back in 1982. This property was developed originally in 1977. It was a vacant lot at the time when it received the notice of intent. In 1982, they were asked to do some further permitting for the wooden steps, the in-ground steps that got put in, again, without permitting. That never seemed to happen, and again, because of at that time, the commission was very, very short-staffed, and there was no enforcement order at the time to pursue that further permitting. So this picture is from 1982, March of 1982, and it does suggest there was a small beach, certainly not on the extent that you see in 2023. The beach was certainly expanded, and it seemed to be expanded in the last several years. It's hard to tell from aerial photos because there are trees that are blocking portions of it, but it does seem as though it was expanded sometime around 2020, maybe 2021. And again, the pier was never permitted as well. So what I'm asking then is that they removed the stone fill from that expanded beach area. That should be done by hand tool only. By April 20, that they removed the unpermitted dock from Shallow Pond. The representative that's here has just asked to have an extension, so I've given them a time until June 1st to get that taken care of. So that should come out.
Is that both issues?
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what we were.
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And then eventually what they're going to need to do is file a restoration planting plan along with the enforcement order response plan that will basically take care of permitting either removing the beach totally and restoring the entire shoreline beach area and BVW area, or they can try and permit a smaller beach that's similar to what was there according to the photos from 1982. And there are certain things that will have to go along with that, and it will also take care of the replacement of the in-ground steps that runs through the entire buffer, and that changed from the wooden steps and the wooden retaining walls to the flagstone and stone, flagstone steps and stone retaining walls in the same footprint. And then again, it's asking for native species. And then all the rest of this is just the standard issues in terms of what we need with annual reports to follow for 3 years, replacement of anything that dies. And I think with that, I'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions, Luis?
Do we know who did the work?
We don't.
Can we find
We
out?
will try. We'll try and find out. Yeah.
So in the meantime, a lot of this work.
Excuse me, can you identify yourself?
Thomas Telford, owner, Accurate Remodeling, here to represent Thomas Keene.
Thank you.
So in the meantime, the gentleman owned the property 2012, sold it in 16. A bed and breakfast called On the Pond opened at that time from 16 and then closed at 20. The bed and breakfast did, I mean, if you're gonna have people stay, you're gonna, you upgrade the property drastically. A lot of this was done while the pea stones, that gentleman said when he bought the house in 2012, those pea stones were there. Those have been there for 15 to 20 years on that beachfront. I mean, according to him. And so, and then, well, like I said, and so a lot of those wood steps and everything, and a lot of the other things got done while the bed and breakfast was there. And then he acquired the property, and now it's, there's like ripping out all the stairs throughout his whole backyard now. I mean, you're totally ripping about the guy's backyard, totally. The steps go all the way through. I mean, we can see the pea stones, okay. But ripping out the whole backyard is, I mean, doing more damage, doing more good than bad.
We're not asking anybody to rip anything
I
out.
thought that's
We're
what that
asking them-
says, replacement of the wood in-ground steps or within the flagstone
Yeah,
replacement.
we're asking that you file a permit to get the permitting for that.
So they don't have to be replaced, they just need to be
They
permitted?
either have to be removed or they have to be permitted.
All right,
So
I
that's what this is.
misunderstood that, sorry.
And again, as I explained, before that any violations that occur on a property become the
Right,
current
yeah, we
homeowners.
just asked for some leniency on, things that, if I don't do something and you do something and I didn't do it, but then it becomes my problem, well, I'd hope I'd get some leniency on something that has nothing to do with
I think we're being very lenient.
Yeah.
I think we are, in a sense
Yeah,
that-
we were under the impression that the steps had to get ripped out, that's all. I appreciate the extension, drastic.
But work with Ed on those.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Any violation under the Concom is go with the parcel, not the owner. Because
Yeah.
the owner can go anywhere, and then the violation becomes a problem.
Right,
And we have a
stays.
difficult time to track it if it is related to the owner. So that's why it has to go with the parcel.
Yep, no, understood, absolutely.
Any question for Ed? Bill?
I do have a question. The dock, that unpermitted dock, is that like a permanent fixture? It's already a seasonal dock.
It is not permanent, but it is there.
It's something that could be installed seasonally.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's as you know, we require all freshwater
Right.
docks to be
And it's-
seasonal.
Right. Really,
They just,
to get a seasonal dock would be not a big deal.
because this is
probably.
not permitted.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Yeah, they haven't pulled it out according to the order of conditions that would follow, so.
Larry?
Is this going to be continued, Ed, or is the order going to be the motivating thing, and then they're going to come back with filings?
They're going to come back with filings. There'll be an enforcement order response plan that
Okay.
will cover the
So
restoration.
there won't
of-
be anything else that he's going to have to do that we're going to have to monitor?
He'll have to do if he wants to keep the pier, he'll have to file a notice of intent for the
So
pier.
whatever he
That
wants
would
to
be a
keep, he
separate
has to
filing.
include it.
And just so
Okay.
you know, this property is going to be before the commission again at next meeting on the 11th. for a deck extension, so.
For a
that's-
what?
For a deck extension.
Deck extension, that's a
Yeah,
tongue
second,
twister.
second floor extension.
All right. Okay, thanks, Ed.
Okay?
And you understand that, sir?
Yes, yes,
All
yes,
right,
that's
all
how
right,
all
thank
this
you.
came about.
Luis?
It looked like about 3 sets of pictures before and after back from where we are now, that an area was actually filled in. Am I
Let me
think
know
one
when I-
more back? Yeah, right
That-
there.
No, it's not. This is, it's just, it's showing the varying water level. So the shallow pond is
Oh.
higher on the left under 2020 than it was in 2021.
So, but it also looks like between 20 and 21, when the water level changed, it looks like there's steps or something that. Those are no steps, but that's. So the steps were underwater?
Their steps are there. It's just, they're very, very hard to see in the left-hand picture.
Okay,
But there were, you can see a few of them if you zoom in close enough.
Okay,
But, and some of them are going down into the water as well.
all right, thank you.
Could I motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Work with
Thank
Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last enforcement order, Matthew R. and Danielle M. Osialdi, 429 Elliott Road, Centerville, maps 227, parcel 109, alteration a wetland resource area, flood zone by clearing vegetations without permit, and alterations of a vegetated wetland by maintaining a small boardwalk, and alteration of the buffer to a wetland resource areas, vegetated wetland by clearing vegetation in the 0 to 100-foot buffer and installing unpermitted stone steps in the 50 to 100-foot buffer. Ed?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this might sound familiar to you because you had just heard an RDA for the diamond piers that were repairing a badly damaged deck off the back of the home here. And as part of that, that's when we first realized any of the issues that were going on here. And so, again, we have a wetland that runs, you have Elliott Road that sort of splits into two, and I still don't understand why it's both Elliott Roads, but it's Elliott Road here, and it's Elliott Road over here. And there's a wetland that runs, a small vegetative wetland that runs in between the two roads. It's a shallow area here, or bowl area here. There was a boardwalk that had been put in, it looked like years ago. The Schiolettis just purchased the property in 2022? 22,
On
right?
Halloween of last year.
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
So 6 months ago.
And so this is their first home that they were purchased. The boardwalk was there long before. But we did, it was literally in the wetland. So we had asked that they remove that, and they've already accomplished that task. Just so you see as of 2014, the backyard was relatively vegetated. It has a lot of smaller seedling scrub pine, and then an awful lot of invasive vegetative matter, so lots of black locust and some honeysuckle and things like that, and some grapevine as well. So the issues that we found were the boardwalk. Again, that's been removed. There were 2 trees that had been cut down. Again, those were storm damaged, and the Schiolettis just went and removed them. They were not aware that they had to have any kind of permitting to do that. And so they had at least temporarily had piled some logs and brush material along the edges or near the wetland edge. Those have been removed as well at this point. The back yard has been scraped somewhat, or at least some of the vegetation has been removed. And then there was also a set of steps, stone steps that had been placed along the, like sort of underneath or at the very edge of the deck at the back corner of the house. There was no change in grade or anything. It was just the steps were put in with the existing grade that's there. So again, I've asked them to remove the unpermitted boardwalk and brush piles. They've already completed that, to have the wetland boundary delineated. And I think, did you say you were working on that at this point, or?
Yes, I was waiting to speak with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then to file a restoration planting plan for staff review. And again, with the standard obligations under the restoration plan, native plantings, no mulch, except around drip lines of plants, and to reestablish that 50-foot buffer. And then, whatever is desired, again, between the 50 and the 100 in terms of landscape. So I think that's all we have. And then if they were, let's say, then also to do the, permit the stone steps with an after-the-fact request for determination of applicability.
Thank you, Ed. Any question for Ed? Luis?
Do we know who did the work?
I don't know. I'll ask you who did the stone steps.
So I just want to say they weren't actually, I mean, obviously they are stone steps. However, it was a retaining wall. When we bought the house on Halloween of 2022, the retaining wall had collapsed. And so what we did was, I think within like a week and a half of us moving in, we started work on the retaining wall, and then we just continued, we did it as a double retaining wall and continued the steps. So it wasn't for looks, it wasn't, for anything aesthetic, it was to hold up the house.
So you did the work yourself with your own?
No.
You had a company?
Yeah, we had people do it.
Would that be worth contacting the company and
I will certainly,
reminding them
yeah,
that they shouldn't?
I will let them know.
Yeah.
And was it a tree company that did the trees, or did you do that yourself?
No, we did that ourselves.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you know not to do that again.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly, yeah. Yes, we do. Lesson learned, we're learning. I started to educate myself.
It's a
so.
process, yep.
Yeah.
That's part of the living in a cave, especially in Barnstable. We've got so many wetland resource area that you need to contact the conservation divisions if you plan to do anything within the jurisdictions. Any question for Ed? Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Is approved. Thank you. Please work with Ed on that.
Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There is one warning letter for violations. Viano Club, 107 Seaview Avenue, Osterville, map 162, parcel 024. Failure to complete mitigation planting under the SE 3-4541. Ed?
That pretty much sums it all up. You saw it all. You've actually discussed this back when with the a new SE filing for the temporary tent that was being permitted just a few weeks ago. That's when the mitigation area, we realized the mitigation area hadn't been planted, so they're going to need to install that, and then we'll get Sullivan to submit a new revised plan that covers both the former mitigation area as well as the new mitigation area.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Now we're getting to the LDA. Deidre W. Yoklian, trustee, 539 Seaview Avenue, nominal trust, proposed septic upgrade at 539 Seaview Avenue, Osterville, as shown on the assessors maps, 114 parcel 045-001. Dan?
Good evening, Chairman Lee, or afternoon, I guess it still is, and members of the commission. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a surveyor and civil engineer with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouthport, and we're helping Bortolotti Construction and the owners here at 539 Seaview Ave out with a simple septic upgrade plan. Person has been here all their life. There is a requirement to upgrade the septic. The reason we're here is that there is a small, what she feels is a man-made pond, and it sure looks like it. To the east of the property, we located that as a isolated wetland and applied the buffers, and because one of the cesspools nicks within the 50, and the work is between 50 and 75 of installation of a tank pump chamber combination, we did need to file. These usually come in as an RDA, which is the short form filing. We're going to be looking for the health department to approve, but pretty straightforward, just a combination pump septic tank and pumping to well outside the 100-foot buffer. And one thing I would just note is that when we staked this out, the owner noted that if we slid the system a little bit to the south, we could miss a tree. So we'll do that, but it's well outside the 100-foot buffer on the other side of the paved driveway from the wetland. And I would note this is in one of the areas that's discharging to an open Nantucket Sound, so wouldn't necessarily be a target for an innovative alternative septic system, being that it's not discharging to an embayment area. But I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Did you say you're going to move the leaching field a little bit?
Yeah, we'll probably put it a little closer to the test holes than where it is now, and would handle that with the health department. But again, it's a very modest change.
Okay. Any questions for Dan? Any public comment on this? Seeing none. Could I have a motion to approve this as a negative determination?
So moved.
But, subject to a revised plan, if you move the locations of the leaching field, you should submit a revised plan for that.
Be
So
happy
moved.
to. Yep.
Anyone second? All in favor? Is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Custom Works Contracting, LLC, removal of existing sewer force main connecting from existing pump chamber serving property at 229 Bridge Street to the existing soil absorption system at 227 Bridge Street, as shown on the Assessors Map 093, parcel 038. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Nelson from Metro West Engineering.
Okay.
There are two RDAs. There are two adjacent and abutting properties. One is shown as 227 Bridge Street. The other is shown as 229 Bridge Street. Both properties are held by the same owner in different entities, but they are listed through the assessor's records basically as two separate properties. And looking at the plan on the board, I do have some smaller 11 by 17 plans that have a little color on them that might be easier to read, so I'm happy to pass those out if you'd like.
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Are we taking these up at the same time?
No, I read it two separately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So looking at the smaller plan, you can see that the property at 227 is shown on the left side or the westerly side of this plan. There are two existing buildings on that property. There's a smaller guest house, which is up at the kind of top left corner, a little driveway just south of that, and then there's a larger house shown in brown, basically south, and it's located outside the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. The adjacent property to the east is 229 Bridge Street. That's got two smaller buildings on it. There's a 1.5-story garage, which is kind of up at the top left corner of shown in brown in the property at 229. And we've got what they call the oyster shanty, which is up against the dock near West Bay, and West Bay is on the right-hand side of this plan. There's a boat landing, the dock, and then basically it turns out to just regular shoreline as you go south of the oyster shanty. And so what we're looking to do is pretty straightforward. Presently there's and they're shown in pink or red on this plan, just to the left of the oyster shanty, so the furthest east or rightmost building on this plan. There's a septic tank and an existing pump chamber. And presently, wastewater goes from the pump chamber, it goes basically in a westerly direction, crosses that interior boundary, and connects up to the existing septic system or leaching field shown just east of the two houses on 227. So we're proposing to remove that existing force main and we're proposing to run a new sewer force main, which is shown in blue, from that same pump chamber up to the existing soil absorption system on the same property. So what the owner is looking to do is put the property at 227 on the market, keep 229. So basically, this is almost like a housekeeping issue to basically keep the septic systems separate. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Louise?
So, just so I understand, is there an existing septic system on 227?
Yes, there is.
Okay, and you're not going to replace that, you're just
decreasing.
separating them?
Exactly, yeah,
And ditto for 228?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any public comment on this one? Could I have a motion to approve this application as submitted?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
One more. You got one, last one.
Well, actually, yeah, they were basically together for 227.
No, I just read the first
Oh,
one
just
into
the
the
vote.
record, so
Okay.
I have to read the second one into
I
the
apologize.
record.
Yep.
That's the process.
Okay.
Customers Contracting LLC, modification to the existing septic system and pump chamber, removal of existing sewer force main connecting the existing pump chamber to the soil absorption system on the abutting property at 227 Breed Street. A new sewer force main will be installed to the existing soil absorption system at 229 Breed Street, Austinville, as shown on the Assessors Map 093, Parcel 037. Since Brian has explained that description, so I think we're pretty clear on this. Any public comment on this one? None. Could I have a motion to approve this as a negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
We have one NOI, John Wilbert, extend gravel driveway, improve site drainage, add shed bricks walkway and granite paver at 70 Bay Lane, Centerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 186, parcels 036004. Hello.
Hello, my name is Paul Mancuso. I'm a wetland scientist at BSC Group, here presenting the proposed project at 70 Bay Lane on behalf of the property owners, the Wilbers, who are right here. And so initially they received an enforcement order for filling in the drainage swale along the front of the property right by Bay Lane. They proposed to reinstall the drainage swale as it was. We provided a planting plan, and the swale will be planted with native species. So that will return the swale to original conditions with a bunch of native plants planted in there as well. The site itself is entirely within land subject to coastal storm flowage. There is a bordering vegetated wetland to the southeast of the property. Portions of the buffer zone extend onto the subject property. And there was an existing gravel driveway. They extended that gravel driveway partially into the 50 to 100 foot buffer of the BVW. And they cleared some trees in order to do that. And so I'd just like to mention the entire 0 to 50 is undisturbed and well vegetated, but the client is proposing significant mitigation plantings on the property, as shown on the landscape planting plan there. All proposed plants are native species. They will be planted along the existing tree line on the southeast side of the property. Additional work that is proposed and included, there is an existing brick walkway from the gravel driveway to the house that will be relayed in approximately the same footprint, so there are no increase in impacts there. They are also proposing a shed in the northern corner of the property and some pavers along the western edge of the property. Additionally, to improve site drainage on the property, they are proposing a stormwater recharge system that is shown on the landscape plan there. And I believe that that's all of the proposed work and plantings that are proposed. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
There is one letter from your abutter, Mary Patricia Vault, 78 Bay Lane. Thank you for working with them in terms of the concern with the stormwater. And I think he mentioned a couple of things on the order conditions, but I don't think that I should including that. The reason is the order condition has a 3-year terms. So any drainage issue will show up in that 3-year term. And then if there is a problem, you would have fix it anyway under the order conditions. So there's no sense to add that as additional conditions into the permit. So questions, Larry?
Hi, Paul. We've had issues with the property to the south of this in prior years. And the wetlands, however, were never mentioned as invading this property. So it sounds as if that both the front and the back of this property have been exposed to flooding problems. Is that fair to say?
I believe on the western side, further from the wetland, there have also been some.
We haven't had problems with flooding on that side.
But what, have you had any erosion problems or any water problems in the yards? You haven't? Okay. Because I was by there today and looked at it. I could see the work being done, and I thought, well, it's both areas. So do you feel that this retention mechanism is going to be sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, that's what was there, and they're replacing it pretty much as was. I mean, initially they filled it in, but they're replacing it as it was and then planting with native species, so.
Okay. Well, it looks like it's a project that you can do the best you can. And that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yep.
But, okay, thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner? None? Any public comment on this? You want to come up and identify yourself? Is there a sign-in sheet? Yep, you can just sign in. Make sure your mic is on with a green light.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Mary Pat Vogt. I live at 78 Bay Lane. I abut the Wilburs at 70 Bay Lane. I suppose I just have a question as far as, there is one more structure that's the drain, the open drain, the 12-inch drain. What is the expectation for the water flow? So the existing catch basin is in the common driveway that I own and my other 3 neighbors share. So the water, how will that proceed? How do you envision that, the stormwater runoff?
Our engineers designed the stormwater system. I believe they designed it to handle whatever stormwater will be coming into the property. It'll be connected to the downspouts in the house and the drain in the yard. I'm not sure how will it handle the water. That's your question?
Okay, so the existing catch basin, and then the design shows a new 12-inch drain basin, and that connects to the, so from the existing catch basin, there is going to be a new line to this new drain basin, and then from the drain basin to the Cultec? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what's the issue? I'll get.
No issue. I just wanted to understand how the flow of the runoff water is expected to go.
I mean, it enters into, I'm not an expert in this, but I was speaking with our engineer before I came here. The Coltex system, it is essentially the water enters into that system and then it recharges into the groundwater. So it'll just sort of flow into the ground. It won't, I'm not sure what else.
Because the 3 drainage structures now will be connected.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it enters through the storm drain that's.
Want to come up to the mic and then speak to the mic because they are you're on the recording.
I'm not sure if that was.
This is John. Can you hear me on the mic?
Oh, there we go.
So what happens is the existing catch basin, the water collects in that. It then comes out of that into the smaller pipe that's there, existing pipe, which several feet in will be cut. There'll be a gathering area where the water collects, and then it's redirected into the large area where all of the different, if you look at the other drawing here, you can see it, but the other drawing is probably the better drawing. So if you look at the left corner of the property, just off the property edge, you'll see the driveway where we've added the stones, and to the side of that is the catch basin. And then the water comes in, and it'll go, you might want to, if I had a pointer, there's a pointer.
There's a pointer. And I can zoom in a little more.
Right in this area here. So what's going to happen is, yeah, if you can zoom in, it would be. So you see that at this area right here is where the water comes in. It'll come across to that area there, which is the 12-inch neoplast drain basin. And then it takes a turn and heads into this large collection area, which basically collects all of the water coming out of the 20-foot right-of-way and from my surrounding property owners. All their water's coming down on that road onto my property. And the current swale area is really an overflow area now. Bulk of all the water is going to be there, but if you had torrential rains, you would have additional coverage by that area because the water would go into there and slowly dissipate. So as a result of going in and speaking with the engineering firm, we've designed this for that 100-year flood setup where it wasn't before. Technically, what was there before would not have held enough water and worked. So water would have gone everywhere, okay? So this is a significantly better design than what was there before. The only thing that has to be done is the catch basin has to be maintained on a regular basis so that the silt doesn't wash into the system. And there is an access point where the neoplast is to get in through the top of it and to clean it out if necessary. And you can also clean the other area where the actual central area where all the water dissipates. That's all in gravel and stone and so on, but you have two access points, inspection points and access points, where you can actually clean that if it gets filled with sediment or sludge. So the setup is really, a Cadillac setup to make sure, and I wouldn't put this thing next to my house, as close as it is to my house, if I thought it was going to direct all the water from everybody's house into my crawl space. So I'm very confident with what this design is and that it'll be very straightforward. In fact, I really don't think there's going to be a lot to do to it. It's really going to be the catch basin, and maybe once in a while, the drain basin, the neoplast basin might have to be touched. But you can look at them both. They'll have inspection ports on the top you can see, and you'll be able to look at the other end as well. So my plan is to do that. I don't expect to have to do a lot more work to it, but it's the overkill that you need for the 100-year storm. That's really what it is. So hopefully that explains to you what's happening. The water comes in through the catch basin and is directed into a larger chamber, then to a 12-inch pipe out the end. And actually, the inlet from the existing catch basin is roughly 10 inches. So it's going into a larger area.
It's pretty good. You did a pretty good job explaining it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
As a homeowner.
He's an engineer as well.
Oh, sorry.
He knows what he's talking about.
I agree with your descriptions because your stormwater is going in, and basically in that area, if you go into sand will take up as much water as you can on the perkway. So.
Correct.
So, any other public comment on this? None. Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one continuance, Lori Sidmans, trustee, Bonnybrook Realty Trust, proposed repair and maintenance and necessitated by a greater shoreline consisting in part of relocations of pierhead and boat lift at 185 Ocean View Avenue. Contiguous as shown on Assessors Map 033, Parcel 016. And this is a continuance from March the 7th, and the applicant has requested for a second continuance to June the 6th without testimony. Could I have a motion to continue this to June 6th without testimony?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Is approved. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Adjourned. Our next meeting is in person again on April the 11th. Good night.